Hello, and welcome to the Silent Why podcast, especially if you're a newbie. If you're an oldie, then welcome back, old friend. Probably a bit of an overkill with the old there, but you know what I mean. I've been out of the recording loop for a week or two because I caught a cold and my voice sounded all weird. But it's 90% back to normal and I wanted to get this episode out, so I'm recording regardless, and I'm going to edit out all my sniffs and coughs along the way. This is just a quick update announcement episode really to keep you in the loop. I've worked out I'm not the kind of character that can switch things up or move things around without telling you what I'm doing and why, and as they say, communication is key. Those of you that were early listeners to the podcast will know that when we first started, we released a full podcast episode, usually with an interview, and a blog episode every week. And yes, we realised after about a year that 2 podcast episodes a week was a lot of content to keep up with. It suited me well at the time because I wasn't in any other employment, and it meant I practically had a full-time job from home that was completely flexible, which after recovering from health issues and going through the whole COVID lockdown was a perfect solution for me. However, I then realised I wanted to do other things in my week, like my fiction writing, so we decided to release 1 podcast episode a week, either a blog, a 101 Loss episode, or a Let's Chat or TV analysis episode. This gave me a lot of freedom with the episodes and a slightly easier workload to do other things. That was 10 months ago, and since then the podcast, areas I'm working in related to grief and my writing have continued to shift and move. Recently, over the summer, we released episodes every other week so I could do my novel editing, and I didn't have to pre-schedule as many episodes before the break, which just makes it a bit easier for me. And now, for a new exciting reason, I've decided to keep releasing podcast episodes every 2 weeks like we're doing now for the foreseeable future. And, being the kind of person I am, I found this quite a hard decision to make. Almost like it lets people down in some way, or it might give the impression I'm less passionate about it, which couldn't be further from the truth. So I'm going to explain why I'm doing it, and be encouraged, because they're exciting reasons. As Olaf says to Marshmallow the snow monster in Frozen, all good things, all good things. And with so much content in the world right now, I know that Chris, that's my husband, co-host and sometimes senior editor, although to be honest, he only comes in to tweak the music for me now, so I might be demoting him to assistant editor, but don't tell him that before I've had time to have that conversation. Anyway, sometimes Chris and I struggle to keep up with podcasts we listen to that come out weekly, because there's so many podcasts now. So I know that this will be the case for some other people too, especially when the ones you listen to can be up to an hour long. So I'm hoping that every other week will allow people to feel like they can keep up with the podcast more easily, rather than disappoint people that it's not every week. The voices in my head when making a decision like this run from, do what's best for you, right through to, well, you've done it now, your downloads are going to drop through the floor. Being an introverted, type 2, hormonal woman is such a fun journey. Anyway, a bonus of my new plan is that having an empty week in between the main episodes will give me space to release more impromptu bonus short episodes if I want to. Like the even more Silent Why episodes, where I give you 2 minutes to think on a particular question in a specific setting with me, or my blogs, which I've missed doing lately. And lastly, but most excitingly, yes, I think that's a word, the main reason for creating this space is because I've been working on something very special. It's an item that I can sell and you can buy, to gift to grieving, anxious, hurting people, just to help them feel less alone. And here's a hint. It begins with H. The full details of this new venture will be shared with my monthly Buy Me a Coffee supporters first, as a thank you for their support, and for allowing this podcast to exist and continue, and also for funding the startup costs of my new venture, even though they didn't know until now that they were doing that. If you're interested in supporting me as a one-off or monthly, you can do that at buymeacoffee.com/thesilentwhy. In fact, anyone that buys me 2 coffees or more before Tuesday the 31st of October, I'll add you to the email that shares all the information of my new venture before it goes public. I'm also going to be starting a mailing list where you can sign up with your email address and find out about new things happening with the podcast that way. I'm not going to be sending out anything weekly or monthly, it's just so I can share news when I have it about the podcast and this new venture. It'll also help those who aren't on social media or want to keep away from social media for a bit, just keep in the loop with what's going on. I'll release more details on the podcast and social media for how and when you can sign up to that soon. I'll also be doing a launch on my social media for the new venture, so keep an eye out for that. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter and Threads, and I post the same content to all of them so you don't miss out wherever you are. I did try YouTube and Pinterest too, but a girl just can't do everything. So, putting the podcast out every other week will help me grow this new exciting area that I'm developing, hopefully make some money, and allow me to expand our work to help grieving people feel less alone. Another exciting event that's coming up is that I've been invited to be part of a grief panel called Grief, One Size Doesn't Fit All. It's going to be a great conversation about grief, how to talk about it, and how to help others through it, whether personally or in a work setting. This is going to cover all kinds of loss, not just bereavement, and the panel has a broad range of experiences when it comes to loss. In fact, 2 of them are previous Silent Why guests, Samantha Langford and Sue Brain. It's completely free to register and watch, you don't have to have a camera on, and you can ask questions as well. And to register for that, I'll put a link in the show notes. It's on Tuesday the 5th of December at 11:30 a.m. UK time. Donella Meadows said this: "The scarcest resource is not oil, metals, clean air, capital, labour or technology. It is our willingness to listen to each other and learn from each other and to seek the truth rather than seek to be right." So whether it's through the podcast or through panel discussions like this, let's keep listening to each other and learning from each other when it comes to grief and loss. It's the only way we're going to change society's approach to it, people's comfort levels with it, and make it into something shared rather than something just endured. I've really missed doing my blogs lately, so I'm going to put one out next week, in between this episode and our next 101 Loss episode on cumulative grief. And I've written a special one on a very big, wide, deep, complicated topic: clouds. So thank you again for listening to The Silent Why. I'm so grateful to have you with me. Don't forget, if you want to encourage me on this journey, please leave a podcast review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Good Pods, or share the podcast with a friend who might need to know that they're not alone in whatever they're grieving right now. And if anything on this podcast has encouraged you, blessed you, or fed you in some way, don't forget you can give back by going to buymeacoffee.com/thesilentwhy and buying me a fancy tea, or supporting the podcast regularly to help pay for the cost of the show and my time producing it. And those emails that arrive really do make my day. As Amit Kalantri said, "When one gives, 2 get happy."